Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of the Cleveland Sports Show. I am your host, Darius Sethna. It's been a couple of weeks since our most recent episode. July 3rd was our most recent episode where Logan Purcell joined me. We broke down the NBA Conference Finals, UEFA 2020 tournament, but guess what? These last couple of weeks have been action-packed to the core, and we're going to break it all down for you. First, starting with the conclusion of the Euro 2021 tournament that took place this summer. We'll also keep you caught up on the MLS, the Columbus Crew, and FC Cincinnati. We're going to break down the entire NBA Finals. That's right, we had the entire final series in between our two episodes, so Logan Purcell will join me to talk about that as well. We'll also keep you updated on the NBA draft and what the Cleveland Cavaliers need to be thinking about as the draft approaches this coming week. We'll also keep you updated with the Olympics. That's right, we had the opening ceremony last night. Logan and I will break down both the men's and women's basketball rosters and what we can expect from them. And last but certainly not least, we'll get you caught up on the Cleveland Indians and their most recent slate of games. Ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned, action-packed week. You're not going to want to miss it out. Here we go, another episode of the Cleveland Sports Show right here with Darius Sethna on NordoniaHills.News. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Darius Sethna of NordoniaHills.News, and the Cleveland Sports Show starts right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. We are wrapping up the podcast in this next couple of weeks as I will be heading off to Ohio University to continue my career in journalism. I will get into all of that in these next couple of weeks. But don't worry, we've got another special edition of the Cleveland Sports Show right here for you. And you know how we kick it off every week on the Cleveland Sports Show with our sports fact of the day. Now, today is July 24th, 2021. And on this day, back in 1977, we've got a baseball sports fact of the day for you today. Pete Rose, the all-time hits leader, passes Frankie Frisch as the switch hit leader with 2,881 total hits. Now, in 1986, Pete Rose would retire from baseball, as I mentioned, after becoming the all-time hits leader, a total of 4,256 hits. Now, Pete Rose's career lasted quite a while. He began his career in 1963 as a player with Ohio's own Cincinnati Reds. Rose would play in Cincinnati for 15 years, from 1963 to 1978. Then in 1979, Rose became a member of the Philadelphia Phillies and played there for 4 years. 1983 was his last season in Philadelphia. Then in 1984, Pete Rose spent one season with the Montreal Expos before he returned to Cincinnati to finish his career with the Reds. 1984 to 1986 was his last couple of years in Cincinnati, and then he was a manager of the Reds from 1984 to 1989. So in those last couple of years in Cincinnati, Pete Rose was not only a player on the squad, he was also a manager. And in 1986, as I mentioned, he retired from baseball as the all-time hits leader, 4,256. That is certainly an amazing sports fact for you, and that sports fact is back in 1977 on July 24th. Pete Rose passed Frankie Frisch as the switch hit leader with 2,881 hits. That is your sports fact of the day. And now, before Logan Purcell joins me to break down all the basketball news for you these last couple of weeks, we're going to get into some soccer news here. First and foremost, the UEFA Euro 2021 tournament has concluded, and Italy, that's right, Italy, are the champions of Europe. We had the final a couple of weeks ago in London, England at Wembley Stadium. A packed house to watch this final match between Italy and England. And a lot of people were favoring England in this matchup, given the fact that they had the home field advantage, they had the crowd behind them. And that home crowd proved vital for England in the opening minutes of this match. In the second minute, that's right, the second minute, English player Luke Shaw scored the opening goal of the match to put England up 1-0 over Italy. This was a huge goal, especially to boost the morale and the confidence for the team in front of that home crowd in London. But Italy, they just kept knocking on the door. They did go down 1-0, as I mentioned early on in that second minute, and that the halftime score was still 1-0 in favor of England. However, 22 minutes into the second half, Leonardo Bonucci of Italy equalized the game at 1 goal apiece, a vital goal to keep Italy's European Championship hopes alive. At the end of regulation, we were tied at 1 goal apiece, which meant we had to continue the match in extra time. 30 additional minutes of extra time, 2 15-minute halves, would still not be able to separate these two teams, and that's right, we went to penalty kicks. And Italy got the better of England in the penalty shootout, 3-2. Donnarumma, the Italian keeper, with some critical saves to help Italy capture their second ever UEFA European title. Their first European title came back in 1968. Now they have a second European trophy to add to their collection with this most recent one in 2020. For England, this was their first major tournament final since 1966, when they played in the FIFA World Cup final, which was hosted at Wembley Stadium in London. That was the year England hosted the FIFA World Cup. And in that final, they defeated West Germany by a final score of 4-2. That was England's only major tournament win to this day. They were very close to getting that second major tournament win a couple weeks ago against Italy at home, but were unable to do so. So Italy, your 2021 UEFA European champions. What a terrific tournament as well, ladies and gentlemen. A total of 142 goals scored in 51 matches. That is an average of about 3 goals per game, and it's the highest goal average since the Euro tournament back in 1976. So if you love goals, which I think all soccer fans do, then this was certainly a tournament of goals scoring at the finest rate. And to be more specific, in terms of top goal scorers, Cristiano Ronaldo of Portugal and Patrick Schick of the Czech Republic tie for top goal scorers of the tournament, each of them with 5 goals. Emil Forsberg, Harry Kane, Karim Benzema, and Romelu Lukaku all tie for second place, each of those 4 players with 4 goals. The assist leader in the UEFA 2021 tournament was Steven Zuber of Switzerland, 4 assists in the tournament. And that concludes your UEFA Euro 2021 news and updates here on the Cleveland Sports Show, but that does not conclude our latest news on the MLS, and more specifically, your defending MLS Cup champion, Columbus Crew, who have had a total of 4 games in between the most recent 2 episodes of the Cleveland Sports Show, starting on July 3rd, where they hosted the New England Revolution for a rematch of last year's Eastern Conference final matchup. And more specifically, these two teams tied at 2 goals apiece. Now, the goal scoring for Columbus came from Yassi Zardes in the 39th minute and an own goal by New England player Andrew Farrell in the 69th minute. However, it was New England that came out firing out of the gates. Tejan Buchanan in the 13th minute got the party started for New England to put them up 1-0, and then Gustavo Bou in the 30th minute put the Revolution up 2-0. It was that one goal by Yassi Zardes in the 39th minute to cut the deficit to 1, and then Andrew Farrell of New England with an own goal to tie this game up at 2 goals apiece. That would be the final goal of the game, and each of these two teams earned a point in the standings of the MLS Eastern Conference. The next game for the Columbus Crew was the Ohio Derby MLS style, when they went down to Cincinnati and faced FC Cincinnati in Southeast Ohio. And guess what? Another 2-2 result for both FC Cincinnati and the Columbus Crew. But guess what? A very, very early goal by FC Cincinnati put them up 1-0. And it was a first-minute goal. That's right, a first-minute goal by Edgar Castillo, which put FC Cincinnati up 1-0 in the match. Then in the 24th minute, Luciano Acosta doubled Cincinnati's lead, a 2-0 early advantage for FC Cincinnati. And once again, the Crew had to fight back. In added time of the first half, Lucas Zelarayan got a much-needed goal for Columbus, once again to cut that deficit to 1. And then in the 77th minute, Miguel Berry tied the game at 2 goals apiece. And that was the second half where Columbus was playing the entirety of that half with only 10 men. In the 42nd minute, Harrison Afful was assessed a red card. Talk about an awful turn of events for the Columbus Crew, but none of that matters. They get the point at least. So those back-to-back games, like first against New England, then against FC Cincinnati, the Crew dug themselves into early first half 2-0 deficits, but showed their resiliency in those second halves and at the end of those first halves to come up and get a point and at least tie these games. The next game after that Cincinnati matchup for the Columbus Crew was this past Saturday, July 17th, against New York City FC. They hosted New York down in Columbus at their brand new arena, and this time the Columbus Crew got themselves ahead. In the added minutes of the first half, Darlington Nabby scored the first goal of the match to put Columbus in the driver's seat right at the halftime break with a 1-0 lead. However, in the opening minutes of the second half, Jesus Medina scored for New York City to tie the game at 1 goal apiece. But then once again, it's the Columbus Crew superstar Lucas Zelarayan that gave Columbus the go-ahead goal in the 62nd minute. That would be the final goal of the match, and Zelarayan would be the hero this past Saturday for Columbus, giving them a much-needed win after 2 tough draws with a 2-1 victory over New York City. And then the final game for the Columbus Crew in between our 2 episodes of the Cleveland Sports Show was yet another tie. So 3 of Columbus's last 4 games have all ended in draws, but this one was a little less exciting than the previous 2-2 draws against New England and Cincinnati, respectively. This most recent matchup for the Crew was this past Wednesday, July 21st, when the team hosted Nashville. This was a 0-0 score, no goals in 90 minutes for either team. Columbus dominated the game in terms of shots and possession. Columbus with 18 shots compared to only 8 for Nashville. 7 of those 18 shots for Columbus were on target. Only 1 of the 8 shots for Nashville were on target. And then Columbus controlled 66% of the possession in this match compared to only 34% for Nashville. And given the fact that Columbus controlled the possession in this matchup, it's no surprise that they also completed more passes than Nashville and had a higher pass accuracy. Columbus Crew, 617 total passes for 89% pass accuracy. However, you don't win games in soccer by just controlling the possession or having more shots or completing more passes. You actually have to score. And neither of these 2 teams were able to do that in the 90-minute time frame. However, the good news is the Columbus Crew were able to once again snatch out at least 1 point from a matchup. So the good news is for Crews fans, in all 4 of these matchups, the Columbus Crew have been awarded at least 1 point to help them improve in those Eastern Conference standings. We'll talk about those standings in a couple minutes, but first, let's highlight Ohio's other MLS team, FC Cincinnati, who also played 4 total games in between our episodes here at the Cleveland Sports Show, so we'll get you caught up on all of those. First, July 3rd, Houston Dynamo against FC Cincinnati. This was a road game for Cincinnati, and guess what? Yet another tie. I feel like I'm going to turn myself into a knot because of all the ties that I'm talking about here in the MLS. See the pun I did there? See, I think I might have some comedy aspirations when I grow older. You never know. But in terms of this game with FC Cincinnati and the Houston Dynamo, 2 very early goals, and it was Houston who struck first in the 3rd minute with a goal by Tyler Pasher. However, just 2 minutes later, FC Cincinnati were able to equalize with a goal by Alvaro Barreal, and that 5th-minute goal would be the final goal of the match. These 2 teams would tie at 1 goal apiece to receive 1 point in the standings. Then I already mentioned the Cincinnati-Columbus game. That was Cincinnati's next game after their tie against Houston. Yet another tie for Cincinnati, so 2 games for Cincinnati, 2 points due to these ties, and then a thriller this past Saturday against Montreal for Cincinnati. It was a game, if you love goals, well, guess what? You should have watched this Montreal-Cincinnati game. What a wild swing of momentum in this matchup. Let's break it down. So in the 6th minute, Haris Medunjanin got the party started for FC Cincinnati, putting them up 1-0. And then, only 8 minutes later, Brenner scored another goal for FC Cincinnati to put them up 2-0. Montreal then began their comeback within that first half. Mason Toye with a goal in the 21st minute for Montreal got them within striking distance. 2-1 FC Cincinnati was the score at this point. And then, in the 34th minute, Joaquin Torres of Montreal equalized the game at 2 goals apiece. So, only 34 minutes played thus far. We already have a total of 4 goals scored. We are tied at 2 goals apiece in the 34th minute, thanks to that equalizing goal from Joaquin Torres. And then, in the 42nd minute, Gustavo Vallecilla put FC Cincinnati back up by 1 goal. So at this point, in the 42nd minute, the score is now 3-2 in favor of Cincinnati, and that would be the halftime break score. Now, going into the second half, it was once again a wild momentum swing. First and foremost, FC Cincinnati got another goal. It was a goal in the 46th minute by Brenner, who scored in the 14th minute to put Cincinnati up 2-0. And this time, he extended the lead once again to 2 goals for Cincinnati. A 46th minute goal by Brenner put FC Cincinnati up 4-2 over Montreal. And at this point, FC Cincinnati look comfortable, and they look like they're going to get a much-needed win to help them boost their place in the standings in the Eastern Conference, but not so fast. Montreal had a momentum swing of their own. It came in the 72nd minute with a penalty kick that was converted by Mason Toye. So Toye converts the penalty kick in that 72nd minute, and now the score is 4-3. FC Cincinnati still up by 1 goal. However, in the closing minutes of the game, it would be the Ahmed Hamdi Hussein Hafez show. He would equalize the game only 2 minutes after Mason Toye's critical penalty kick in that 72nd minute. In the 74th minute, Hafez converted a goal which tied the game at 4 goals apiece. And then, when I say dying minutes, I mean dying minutes of this game. In the 87th minute, only 3 minutes left to play. Hafez converts another goal for Montreal to give them a 1-goal lead over Cincinnati, 5-4. That would be the final goal of the game. So in those final moments, it was Ahmed Hamdi Hussein Hafez who really stepped up for Montreal to give them a huge win in a very competitive, very fun matchup against FC Cincinnati. And this was certainly a game where effort was not a problem by either teams. It was the late game heroics of Hussein Hafez that saved the day for Montreal. And that was FC Cincinnati's third game of the four. Let's talk about their most recent game, which was this past Wednesday against Atlanta United. And this was a much more simple game to discuss, but it was another tie. So, spoiler alert, at this point, we're just getting ties all the time. But no worries, this is why soccer is one of the most fun sports to play, am I right? Well, let's talk about this final game this week for FC Cincinnati. It was a game they hosted down in Southeast Ohio against Atlanta United, and the two teams tie 1 goal apiece. Both the goals came in the second half, and Cincinnati struck first. In the 61st minute, Luciano Acosta put Cincinnati up 1-0, but then only 9 minutes later, in the 70th minute, Ronald Hernandez equalized the game for Atlanta, and that would be the final score, a 1-1 draw for Cincinnati. They only controlled 44% of the possession in this game and only had 14 shots, 6 of those 14 shots on target for FC Cincinnati, compared to a total of 22 shots for Atlanta. 9 of Atlanta's 22 shots were on target. And that concludes FC Cincinnati's schedule in the MLS, but let's talk about the overall MLS standings and how these two Ohio teams place in those standings. So as of right now, Columbus with the higher standing than FC Cincinnati. The Columbus Crew, the defending champs, in 6th place in the MLS's Eastern Conference right now. That is good for them because they are still in playoff contention with that placing. In 14 games, the Columbus Crew have 5 wins, 6 draws, and 3 losses for a combined total of 21 points. And FC Cincinnati, hey, they're not at the bottom of the table. They're in 11th place. They are not in playoff contention, but have been looking better as of late. And those draws certainly helped them. Getting those, a point a game, especially helped them in the standings here. 13 matches played for FC Cincinnati, 3 wins, 4 draws, but still 6 losses on the season. That's been holding them back. They do have a total of 13 points, and they certainly are within striking distance. First and foremost, for FC Cincinnati, their upcoming schedule includes a matchup with Nashville. That's today at 8:30 p.m. The next game for FC Cincinnati will be on Saturday, July 31st. I almost said 11th there. It's the Saturday, July 31st at 7:30 p.m. They'll be hosting DC United before heading back out on the road in New York on Wednesday, August 4th at 8 p.m. They'll be going up against the New York Red Bulls. And for the Columbus Crew, their upcoming schedule consists of another matchup today. First and foremost, they'll be in Atlanta taking on Atlanta United. That'll be at 3:30 p.m. The Crew will then continue their road trip. It's a quick 2-game road trip. The final game of that 2-game road trip will be in New York City against New York City FC. That'll be Friday, July 30th at 7:30 p.m. And then next for the Crew, their next game after that New York City one will be Wednesday, August 4th at 7:30 p.m. back in Columbus against DC United. Columbus will then host Atlanta United for the rematch on Saturday, August 7th at 7:30 p.m. And that concludes all of our soccer news this week on the Cleveland Sports Show. See what happens when you miss a couple of weeks. We missed a lot of action. I apologize. I was out of town, but we're back, and Logan Purcell is back, and now it's time. We're going to break down the NBA Finals for you. And here he is, ladies and gentlemen, Logan Purcell back with me on the Cleveland Sports Show. Logan, first and foremost, thanks for being with us this weekend. It's been a couple of weeks Sorry about the long break, but how have you been doing these last couple of weeks with so much that's been going on in the sports world?
I'm good. It was a crazy finish to the finals, but I'm really excited to get into it and start breaking everything down.
Yeah, certainly. You just mentioned the finals, and that's where we are going to start. The NBA Finals between the Milwaukee Bucks and the Phoenix Suns. Now, let's get you a recap of all the games. This was a 6-game series, and Phoenix had home court. The first 2 games of this series were in Phoenix, Arizona, and 2 home games for the Suns. 2 wins. First in Game 1 was a critical 118-105 wins for the Phoenix Suns over the Milwaukee Bucks. Giannis Antetokounmpo returned in his first game back since he injured his knee in Game 4 against the Atlanta Hawks in the previous series, and it seemed like he didn't miss a beat. 20 points, 17 rebounds for Giannis. Chris Middleton, the leading scorer for the Bucks in Game 1 with 29 points. But it was the Suns who won the game, took Game 1. Devin Booker and Chris Paul, respectively, with 27 points and 32 points. And DeAndre Ayton with a terrific night as well, 22 points and 19 rebounds in 39 minutes. And Game 2 was same old sweet success for the Phoenix Suns. And this game was a little more tight towards the end, but Phoenix were able to pull away once again on their home court. Despite a 42-point effort from Giannis Antetokounmpo, the Phoenix Suns were still able to get the victory. Mikal Bridges was the second leading scorer for Phoenix with 27 points in 38 minutes. Devin Booker, 31 points in 44 minutes for him. Chris Paul with another great performance, 23 points and 8 assists for him. And Suns with a commanding 2-0 series lead. Now the series shifts to the Pfizer Forum in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The Phoenix Suns and the Bucks Game 3. And the Bucks, in a do-or-die situation, down 2-0, in front of their home fans, they took care of business. In the second quarter, they outscored the Phoenix Suns 35-17. There was a point in the second quarter where Phoenix was up 36-30. And the score for the rest of the game was 90-64 in favor of the Milwaukee Bucks. And Milwaukee punches Phoenix in the mouth in Game 3 with a 120-100 victory to get themselves right back in this series. For the Milwaukee Bucks, Giannis Antetokounmpo, another masterful performance. 41 points in 38 minutes to go along with 13 rebounds. Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton combined for 39 additional points for Milwaukee as well. And Bobby Portis off the bench was a spark for them with 11 points, 8 rebounds, all in 18 minutes. But Phoenix still had the edge in the series, up 2-1. And Game 4, I was expecting a Suns victory, and that was not the case. In Game 4, Milwaukee took the win. It was a much closer affair, and the Phoenix Suns were outscored by 12 in the fourth quarter by the Milwaukee Bucks. Chris Paul arguably had his worst performance of the entire finals in Game 4, and we only had 10 points in 37 minutes and only 7 assists as well. Despite a 42-point effort from Devin Booker, the Suns were unable to close it out in Game 4, and this was a pivotal loss for them, and the series was tied at 2 games apiece heading back to Phoenix. Now, if I thought the Suns were going to win Game 4, I was even more confident that they were going to win Game 5, especially with the series going back to Phoenix for this pivotal matchup. And this was a crazy game down to the wire. After the first quarter, I thought this was going to be a blowout win. Phoenix was up 37-21 after the first quarter in front of their home fans in Game 5. But then Milwaukee, talk about a second quarter surge. They outscored Phoenix 43-24 in the second quarter and ended up taking the lead into halftime, 64-61. They then outscored Phoenix 36-29 in the third quarter, and that was part of a 123-119 win for Milwaukee on the road. Giannis Antetokounmpo with 32 points and 9 rebounds. Chris Middleton, 29 points in 44 minutes. And Drew Holiday led the Bucks in assists in Game 5 with 13 assists, Oh, yeah, and he also dropped in 27 points in 42 minutes. A critical win for the Milwaukee Bucks in Game 5, which set them up for a date with destiny in Game 6 at the Pfizer Forum in front of their home crowd and in front of 60,000, we were told, additional fans outside the Pfizer Forum in the Deer District, which is like the watch party area in the Milwaukee area, right outside of Pfizer Forum. The Bucks were ready to be coronated as champions, and they played like it. After the first quarter, they were up 29-16, but then Phoenix came roaring back. They outscored Milwaukee 31-13 in the second quarter. The Suns were not going to go down without a fight, trying to force a Game 7 back in Phoenix. But it was Giannis Antetokounmpo who saved the day for Milwaukee. 50 points in 42 minutes to go along with 14 rebounds and 2 assists. Many analysts are arguing if this is the best closeout performance in a finals game. And closeout he certainly did, Logan. A 105-98 victory for the Milwaukee Bucks gives them the NBA crown for the 2020-2021 season. Giannis Antetokounmpo, not only an NBA champion, but also the Finals MVP. And like we said, there is so much to break down. That was just a recap of all the games. So, Logan, I'm going to turn it over to you now and get your thoughts on these NBA Finals. To you, what game was it that stuck out the most of you of these 6 games? Was it Game 4 where, the Suns kind of basically blew that game to take a 3-1 series lead, which they were not able to do? Was it Game 5 with that incredible Drew Holiday alley-oop to Giannis Antetokounmpo? What game was it to you that stuck out in these NBA Finals?
Well, to me, it was Game 5. One of the conversations that I had with a lot of people that I talked to about the Finals was that in order for the Bucks to have a chance in the series, somebody else was going to have to play like the NBA Finals MVP, and not Giannis. And Game 5, it was Chris Middleton. Not Chris Middleton.
Drew Holiday, yeah.
I mean, he just let loose. He was easily the best player on the floor from, tip to the final buzzer.
Yeah.
So 0-0. That way he was the guy. And, just watching the game, he had complete utter dominance on not only the offensive side with his 27 points and 13 assists, I believe, on like 67% from the field, but he also dominated Chris Paul, guarding him full court, man to man.
Right.
That to me, it takes a lot to completely dominate both sides of the basketball the way that he did. And for me, Game 5 was the turning point because that truly showed that there is another guy on that team, and his name's Drew Holiday, and he can show up. And
in Game 4, too, Logan, Chris Middleton had a huge performance. When you talk about a big 3 for the Milwaukee Bucks, they just poured it on. Especially, we talked about Game 5. They all had great all-around performances. But, Chris Middleton, too, in Game 4, what a spectacular performance from him. He really showed you that he was their closer down the stretch. 40 points for Middleton in Game 4 to go along with 6 rebounds and 4 assists. So the Milwaukee Bucks big 3, let's be honest, they outplayed the Phoenix Suns. I know Devin Booker had back-to-back 40-point games, but there were games where Chris Paul was turning the ball over more than we were expecting him to. And let's be honest, outside of Game 1, Logan, I couldn't find DeAndre Ayton. He was having to go up one-on-one against Giannis, and he was just losing that matchup every time. I know the youth and inexperience obviously played a factor, but outside of Game 1, Logan, I could not find DeAndre Ayton. And it was a little disappointing, especially when Dario Saric went out in Game 1. That kind of compromised them because that was just one less body they were unable to throw at Giannis. And Giannis, for the majority of this series, he had his way. And speaking of Giannis, let's talk about the Bucks, who are going to be the defending NBA champions this upcoming season, next season. In terms of championships for Milwaukee, this was their second ever franchise championship. Their first championship came all the way back in 1971 when Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Oscar Robertson led the way for the Bucks. So Giannis and the crew now will head in to this upcoming season for the NBA, which will only be about 3 months away, as the reigning champions of the league. So let's talk about this, Logan. With the Eastern Conference and how loaded it is, maybe we could say the Bucks got a little bit lucky with Kyrie Irving going down and the Nets not winning this NBA championship. You've also got the Philadelphia 76ers, who I think are going to be making some changes after what happened to them against Atlanta in these playoffs. And speaking of Atlanta, they're not going to go anywhere. They're young, no pun intended, and they've got Trae Young on that squad with John Collins, Kevin Huerter, so they're going to be a team that's going to be making some noise. You can never count out the Boston Celtics, especially now that Al Horford has rejoined them in Boston. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown look like they're going to be the cornerstones of the future. So Milwaukee definitely has some, and obviously the Miami Heat as well. So Milwaukee's got some competition within their own conference. And with all that being said, Logan, should they be considered the favorite in the Eastern Conference next season, even though they're the defending NBA champions?
Well, I don't see anybody, and I hate to say it like this, but I don't see anybody but Brooklyn being, the favorite next year. I know they did go down in 7 games, but it is worth mentioning that James Harden did go down early in that series, and it took them 7 games to take down a hobbled Nets team, a very hobbled Nets team that never had Kyrie, Harden, and KD playing together.
Right.
It took them 7 and OT in the 7th game.
Yep.
So, don't get me wrong, the Bucks showed that they are another one of those Eastern Conference powerhouses. They showed that they can get it done when it matters, but I can't imagine putting money on any team in the Eastern Conference aside from the Brooklyn Nets at this point.
Yeah, if I'll be honest with you too, Logan, if Kyrie Irving doesn't go down, I don't see how the Nets are not standing here today as the NBA champions. But, we've got to give credit where credit is due. A terrific playoff story this year for the Milwaukee Bucks. We saw the emergence of Chris Middleton as an NBA star. Drew Holiday paid dividends for this team. And Giannis Antetokounmpo, was a lot of slander was going his way in terms of him not being able to perform in the playoffs. Well, with that 50-point masterpiece to close out the Suns in Game 6, that was certainly a terrific performance and a deserved champion this year in the NBA. And a terrific story of the American dream, too, Logan. You talk about Giannis Antetokounmpo, who sold, trinkets when he was a youngster in Greece with his other brothers. And now all 3 of those brothers are NBA champions. And it's just a terrific story of pursuing the American dream. Now, let's go on the other side of the NBA Finals and talk about the Phoenix Suns. In your eyes, Chris Paul, obviously very disappointing. I think if any neutral NBA fan, they were rooting for Chris Paul to win this NBA championship. What he's given to the game, what he's meant to this league. I believed that Chris Paul could win these NBA Finals and leave this league as a champion. He's already stated to media that he's not going to retire with 16 seasons under his belt. But I'll be honest with you too, Logan. We talked about the loaded Eastern Conference, and Chris Paul, he's in a loaded Western Conference. And, he can opt out of his contract with Phoenix. So what is your idea of what Chris Paul should do? Should he stay in Phoenix, or should he look to go somewhere else? Because my thought on it, Logan, is Chris Paul should go to the Los Angeles Lakers. I think that's his best chance to get back to the finals and win a championship. You talk about Chris Paul with LeBron James and Anthony Davis and some of the pieces they have on that Lakers supporting cast. I think that, the LA Lakers should definitely be the favorite in the Western Conference if they get Chris Paul. And I think it would put them over the top in the West. And because let's face it, Logan, if he stays with Phoenix, you've got the 2 LA teams. You've got the Utah Jazz. The Dallas Mavericks are an up-and-coming team. I don't know what Portland's going to do if they keep Damian Lillard, how that all goes. Denver is not going anywhere. You've got Jamal Murray. You've got the reigning MVP in Nikola Jokic. So this is going to be a tough Western Conference for the Suns to go through to get back to the finals. And I'm thinking Chris Paul should go to the Lakers. What are your thoughts on what Chris Paul should do for this next season, Logan?
So I think I I can't say I disagree with you. I mean, a team with LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and Chris Paul sounds really nice, and then you talk about a lot of the trade and signing rumors that have been going on there, Spencer Dinwiddie, Kyle Lowry, and DeMar DeRozan.
Right.
All individually wanting to join Los Angeles. But one of the interesting things that I had, thought of is him potentially going to Dallas. If you think about it, you want to talk about going to compete for a championship. You've got, a 23, 22-year-old superstar in Luka Doncic, who will absolutely tear up this league for years to come. Kristaps Porzingis is really underplayed, but I think that being a third option, Kristaps Porzingis will flourish, and he'll become he'll go back to the old Kristaps that we all used to love, and not this, 10 and 10 kind of guy, more back to the 26 and 11. I think that Dallas is another really, really good option because they've got depth with Jalen Brunson at the point, and one of the things that Dallas is in the market for is a starting point guard to help Luka Doncic in the backcourt. So one of the options that you can look at also alongside the Los Angeles Lakers is the Dallas Mavericks to go and help out Luka Doncic, who almost basically single-handedly took out the Los Angeles Clippers by himself last season. So that to me is another really, really solid option for Chris Paul coming up this season.
Well, here's my thing about Chris Paul going to Dallas, Logan. It's the fact that when you look at Luka Doncic, and you're absolutely right, he is going to be tearing up this league for years to come. But in order to tear up this league, he needs the ball. We look at Luka Doncic when he plays, and let's face it, his movement off the ball is pretty bad. I mean, he doesn't really move without the ball. He needs the ball in his hands to be successful. Chris Paul is a point guard, and he's the point god for a reason, because he has the ball and he can make plays. You're talking about two guys who need the ball to be successful and who have, Jason Kidd there in his first year coaching. I'll be honest, I'm not super high on Kristaps Porzingis. I don't know how he can really bounce back, especially when you're going to have two guys with Chris Paul and Luka handling the ball. So I feel like that's going to create a feud, because I believe Luka thinks he is the face of the Dallas Mavericks, and egos might clash. So I just think that if you were Chris Paul, why, and it's not like Chris Paul's in like year 6 or 7. He'll be going into his 17th year. So why would you join Luka Doncic and Kristaps Porzingis and these young players when you can go to Los Angeles, play with an experienced LeBron, play with an experienced Anthony Davis, who have won a championship together, and you're gonna be the primary point guard. Like, yes, LeBron can handle it, a few times, but he can obviously work off the ball as well. He can do anything. So if Chris Paul goes to LA, he's for sure going to be the point guard. Whereas if he goes to Dallas, you're kind of scratching your head as, who's going to be handling the ball? Is there going to be friction between the two? So what's your counter argument to that, Logan?
So the only thing that I had a problem, and this is my only worry with the Los Angeles Lakers, and don't get me wrong, Kristaps Porzingis is, got the same risk factor, but, when you have a guy the level of skill as Anthony Davis, top 5 basketball player when in the NBA when healthy, who can't stay on the floor, that's when we run into problems, okay? Because you're already talking about a Los Angeles Lakers team that is very top-heavy, and they rely on their top guys. We saw what happened without Anthony Davis this postseason, and they were knocked out in 6 games.
But Kristaps Porzingis can't stay on the floor either. He was injured for a lot of this last season.
But to me, the Lakers' depth also concerns me more than the Dallas depth does. I think that the veterans on the bench for the the Mavericks, is a higher quality than the Los Angeles Lakers, just from a cap standpoint.
Okay.
Because, Anthony Davis and LeBron James are both max contract players.
Right.
Luka Doncic is not yet. He's still on his rookie contract, I believe, yeah?
Yep.
So they have the money to afford guys like, say, Tim Hardaway, a Maxi Kleber, those outside shooters, which we saw the Lakers struggle with heavily last year, is getting guys to consistently shoot the basketball.
Yeah.
Now, I said earlier, if, assuming they get even 2 of the guys that I mentioned in those rumors that I've heard of with Dinwiddie, Lowry, and DeRozan, if they were to get two of those guys, we're having a completely different conversation.
Yeah.
But
Well,
right now, they don't have those guys, so you have to treat it as if they don't.
Well, yeah, and we'll certainly see what Chris Paul does. It's going to be a very interesting offseason. We know the special bond he created with a lot of those Phoenix Suns players in Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton. Really had a career year thanks to the advice and the wisdom of Chris Paul. So we'll see what the Suns do with Chris Paul going forward. But in the meantime, the Bucks can sit back, celebrate. They are the 2020-2021 NBA champions. And before we move on to our next topic, Logan, let's do a season recap of this most recent NBA season, because a lot was going on. Obviously, COVID still played a major role in how the season progressed. We had a lot of players going through COVID-19 protocols, even in the playoffs. But in the playoffs, we saw fans going into arenas a lot more. So what were your thoughts on this NBA season, Logan? And did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I think that they did a really good job of letting fans in and shortening the season. I think even if it was just only the 10 games down to the 72 that it was, I think was a great idea, and they had great execution on it because I think a lot of the teams made back a lot of money that they lost from the bubble.
Yes.
Because the bubble, I'm sure, made market value for a lot of those teams go down a lot. Even the champion Lakers, I heard, lost like billions because, there's no fans.
Right.
Nobody's paying for all that stuff. It's out of their own pocket pretty much. And I think that the NBA was really an enjoyable season. I think everybody has the same complaint as I'm going to bring up now of injuries suck.
Yeah.
And they it feels like it just ruined the season because, if you think about it, 90% of the teams had somebody hurt. Because, I think anybody can make the argument that the Clippers don't lose that series if Kawhi's healthy.
Yeah, I believe the Clippers are in the finals, yeah.
Maybe the Lakers don't lose that series if AD is healthy.
Right.
It just can go back and forth, and I think that was the only thing that kind of ruined it for me late in the season. But besides that, I think the NBA did a tremendous job.
Yeah, and it was certainly a tremendous season as well. So excited for next season. It was just a terrific. We look at all these teams, and yes, there are super teams, but still so many competitive games, some great playoff series from these NBA playoffs, and the Bucks are the 2021 NBA champions. Let's move on to our next topic of discussion, Logan. We're going to keep it focused here on the NBA and on the Cleveland Cavaliers because they have an important week coming up for them. And with the NBA draft, which will be taking place in Brooklyn, New York, the first draft that will be in person in Brooklyn. Obviously, last year it was all done virtually. So let's look at some of the top draft prospects for this upcoming NBA draft, Logan. Cunningham, he is going to be the first pick. It looks like there was a report that he visited Detroit, Michigan, because it is the Detroit Pistons who have the number 1 overall pick, and Cade Cunningham made a visit to Detroit. So it seems like Detroit's going to get their guy in Cunningham. But there's still some other options for the Cavs. They have the 3rd pick in the draft, their highest pick in quite a while. In fact, their highest lottery pick since 2014 when they drafted Andrew Wiggins with the number 1 pick and then traded him to get Kevin Love. So right now it looks like Evan Mobley out of USC looks like he's going to be that guy. Or the Cavs can go with someone like Jalen Suggs. If Jalen Green is still on the board, we'll see what happens there. Jonathan Kuminga out of the Congo, a power forward, could also be a valuable option. But when I look at this roster, Logan, I see a lot of guard play, obviously, with Colin Sexton, Darius Garland, the 2 guards. And Isaac Okoro as well is going to be a guy who's also going to get a lot of minutes at those guard positions. And I think if you're the Cleveland Cavaliers, you need an established center. Because Jared Allen, yes, he's still on the roster, but really outside of Jared Allen, there's not really a legitimate center on this team. You've got other guards like Damian Dotson, Taurean Prince, Broderick Thomas, and as I mentioned, Cavs need a big guy, because Larry Nance Jr. I think can play the center position, but I would like to see him play more of a forward because he can shoot the ball as well. So I think if you're the Cavs, I really think that Evan Mobley would be a good choice for them. Now, what do you think the Cavs should do with this number 3 pick, Logan? Should it be Evan Mobley, or do you think it should be someone else?
Well, right now, if you look at some of the projections, a lot of lists, differ based on what website you go to and who it's from.
Right.
The one that I was just looking at has Jalen Suggs going number 3 overall to the Cavs, and I think that would be probably the biggest mistake in the past decade.
Yeah.
I think that is just not the decision that they want to make. They don't really need the guard help, even assuming they were to trade Colin Sexton, which, there's been a lot of rumblings about.
That should not happen.
I think Evan Mobley is the move right here. I mean, this guy is a versatile 7-footer who can, shoot more than just, fadeaways from 6 feet out. He's got a really solid mid-range game. We saw him at USC. He was a huge talent. He's been great. He's been highly touted since coming out of high school.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to me, he has to be the pick at number 3 overall. But, I mean, at the same time, if a guy like, I don't know, say a Jalen Green was to fall, I don't know how you pass on that. Both
Right.
Cade Cunningham and Jalen Green seem to be like one-in-the-lifetime kind talents offensively. Cade Cunningham, you saw him in March Madness, did his job. He went to work.
Yeah.
And then Jalen Green, for a lot of people, they don't really know that name doesn't ring a bell because nobody really paid attention to the G League. But this kid is a superstar.
Yes.
I mean, like, he put up big numbers at Ignite, and I think that this kid is going to be an offensive elite talent to come.
And here's
so if he was to fall, maybe that's another pick, because he's big enough to play the 3 as well.
And here's my thing, Logan. The only problem with Jalen Green is it goes back to that guard position. So if the Cavs draft a guy like Jalen Green, yeah, you've got another elite guard, but you're going to get destroyed in the paint most nights because you don't really have a legitimate big man other than like Jared Allen and Larry Nance Jr. So do you think the Cavs will be compromised defensively if they draft Jalen Green?
Well, no, I don't think they will because of Jared Allen's ability to hold down the fort inside. I think that we don't give Jared Allen enough credit on the interior, so I think that would be a great backside help for if we were to draft Evan Mobley.
And also, last topic on the Cavs draft, there have been rumors circulating, Logan, that teams like the Orlando Magic, the Toronto Raptors, have offered some packages for the to the Cavs for that number 3 pick. In my opinion, I think the Cavs should reject all of those trade packages and focus on drafting Evan Mobley with that number 3 pick. Do you think the Cavs should be interested in making a trade with a team interested in that number 3 pick, or should the Cavs hold on to it?
Well, I mean, obviously you have to look at all options. I mean, if a team was to offer, say, I don't know, Fred VanVleet and number 7 or number 8, for instance, of course you might take that trade because I don't know if the top talent is, worth losing an opportunity to get almost the same level talent and a guy like Fred VanVleet.
Right.
But, I personally would probably still hold on to it.
Yeah.
Move on. You get Evan Mobley, and to me, I think playing Evan Mobley at the 4 or Jared Allen at the 4 and, vice versa with the other one at the 5 would be a disgusting front court. I mean, if this guy plays up to his potential, I think that would be one of the best front courts in the NBA.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Realistically speaking, just if Evan Mobley can find a way to step outside the 3-point line and start shooting a little bit more, that'd be a really, really scary group to deal with on the inside. Yeah,
this is certainly going to be a very interesting draft. It seems like Cade Cunningham is going to be chosen by the Detroit Pistons, and the 2021 NBA Draft will be this upcoming Thursday, July 29th, from the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, New York. Logan and I will break down the Cavs' decision in our next episode. We'll see what happens. But it's Detroit with the first pick. Houston Rockets have that second pick, and then our very own Cleveland Cavaliers have that critical third pick, which can really help change the direction the franchise is going in. Let's stick to basketball, Logan, and talk about the WNBA. for a little bit here. We won't have any WNBA games until Sunday, August 15th. The break for the Olympic Games, which started yesterday, is going on. So we have both the men and women's national teams in Tokyo ready to compete. But before the season closed, the points per game leaders, Tina Charles of Washington, averaging about 26 points per game. Kayla McBride leads the league in free throw percentage at about 96%. John Kell Jones leading the league in rebounds with about 11 per game. And in assists, Courtney Vandersloot of Chicago leads that category by 3. Behind her is Chelsea Gray of Las Vegas. She has 6 assists. Vandersloot of Chicago is averaging about 9 assists per game this season. She's also league leader in steals, averaging about 2 steals per game. So, Logan, let me ask you this about the the WNBA. What team before the season closed for these Olympic Games? What team stood out to you the most in both the West and the Eastern Conference?
Well, the finish by the Chicago Sky. I mean, wow.
Yeah.
With Candace Parker back, we talked about it, and I didn't expect much out of them, but good Lord, did they step up. Wow, they put themselves promptly in the second spot in the Eastern Conference. I give them all the credit in the world. 10-10 records, 7-3 in their last 10. They have absolutely showed up. So, a huge congrats to them and getting the job done. And then in the Western Conference, the Las Vegas Aces, to me, were another surprise. I mean, I expected them to be talented. Yeah. They got a lot of youth on that team and a lot of, team bonding hadn't really happened yet. With A'ja Wilson leading the charge at that forward position, only in her 3rd year here. But I didn't expect much because of the youth. They had a lot of high picks. They had a lot of talented draftees. But when we had originally talked about them, I expected them to be, kind of where the Phoenix Mercury are. Right. Maybe even Minnesota a little bit. But I mean, at 15-6, a game behind the Seattle Storm. I mean, wow, what a season for them. They did their work just as well as Chicago did in the second half of the season. So for the East, it's got to be Chicago, and the West, I give the credit to Las Vegas.
And let me kind of put this in there too, Logan. The Indiana Fever, who are the worst team in the WNBA, have a record of 4-16. They actually have the second longest winning streak in the WNBA. They've won 3 in a row. So, Logan, when you look at the Indiana Fever, what have you seen kind of from that 3-game winning streak, and do you think they can carry that into the second half of the season?
Well, I mean, here's the problem that you run into, okay? You love a winning streak. A winning streak's really good, and especially when you beat a team like, New York, who's 10-11 right now. They're 3rd in the East, and they're doing okay. With Sabrina Ionescu, she's picked it up the second half of the season. But here's the problem that you have. They were 1-16. Let that sink in. They were 1-16. I don't know if you can get over that. Now, is it momentum? Of course. Will they probably have a better second half of the season? Do I think? Yeah, I think they will. But I mean, it's all up to Kelsey.
Yeah, I'm not saying. Yeah, I'm not saying they're gonna finish the season like at 500 or above 500. But I'm just saying, hey, they've won their last 3. It's hard to win 3 games in a row, so I think they're going to have a better second half of the season, but please continue with your analysis of that.
Yeah, no, I 100% understand what you're saying, but I mean, even then, they were 1-16. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, that's like, Houston Rockets level stuff now, who won 17 games last season.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they're gonna have a little bit better of a second half, but I don't know by the levels or how much better it can be after starting off your season with 1 win in 17 games.
Yeah, it's certainly a tough season for the Indiana Fever, but they do go into the break with some momentum, winning their last 3 games. Now, the upcoming schedule for the WNBA will resume on Sunday, August 15th. We have a slate of games for you. Seattle Storm will be taking on the Chicago Sky. What a fun matchup that will be from the Windy City. Connecticut Sun will be taking on the Dallas Wings. Washington Mystics going up against Las Vegas. Atlanta Dream going up against the Phoenix Mercury at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. on August 15th. The New York Liberty will be in Minnesota taking on the Lynx, and then the final game of August 15th will be at 9 p.m. Eastern Time with the Indiana Fever going up against the LA Sparks. And that concludes our WNBA news. And Logan, it's finally here, the 2021 Olympic Games. We had the opening ceremony last night from Tokyo. All the teams, all the participating athletes representing their countries in the opening ceremony last night. But let's talk about Team USA, and since we've been talking about basketball for the majority of the podcast, let's stick to basketball. And Team USA this year has drawn a lot of concern with some of their exhibition losses to Nigeria and Australia, but it seemed like they were kind of picking it up at the end of those exhibition games. And in terms of what they can do in these Olympics, I certainly see them going far. Their first game for the men's basketball team in these Olympics will be Sunday, July 25th at 8 in the morning. They'll be taking on France, who have Rudy Gobert as their center. And then Wednesday, the 28th of July, they'll be going up against Iran. And then the 31st, next Saturday, Team USA will be going up against the Czech Republic. So, Logan, in these 3 games, I'm expecting at least 2 victories. I think the U.S.'s hardest opponent is going to be France. I would not be surprised if the U.S. wins all 3 of these games, and I am expecting them to win all 3 of these games. Now, when you look at the roster, obviously Kevin Durant is leading the way, but you've also got guys like Damian Lillard, Draymond Green, Jason Tatum. Bradley Beal is unfortunately out due to COVID protocols. But Devin Booker's on the squad. You've got Bam Adebayo from the Miami Heat. Drew Holiday, NBA champion, on there as well. You've got Zach LaVine, Chris Middleton as well. So when you look at this roster, Logan, and you see the teams they're going to be facing in these Olympic Games for the next week or so, what are your expectations for Team USA?
Well, I mean, I'm sorry, but I can't expect anything less than gold. And I don't mean to undermine any of these other, national basketball teams or anything like that, but I mean, come on. A team with Damian Lillard, Kevin Durant, Jason Tatum, Devin Booker, Chris Middleton. I can literally go on 4 days talking about the absolute stardom that is on this basketball team. There is zero reason that they should be losing games.
Yeah.
I think it's completely absurd that they lost, to Australia. And
Nigeria.
I don't remember what the
Nigeria.
was.
Nigeria.
Yep. I cannot believe that. Like, that was just unbelievable to me. So
yeah,
don't get me wrong. I agree with you 100% that if they're going to lose, it's going to be to France. But there is zero reason that they should lose.
Yeah.
Because, even giving Rudy Gobert, you got Bam Adebayo, you got JaVale McGee. You've got these other NBA players.
Yeah.
You've got them to match up with. There is zero reason you should be losing games.
And they have elite shooting too. You've got Devin Booker, you've got Chris Middleton. Drew Holiday can shoot from the outside. Damian Lillard, obviously. Kevin Durant is a 3-point machine. So, when it comes to shooting too, there should be no reason the U.S. should be struggling to put points up on the board.
Exactly my point. And to me, if anything less than gold is an absolute embarrassment to the U.S. and the NBA. Because, wow, if you can't put together a team that can't beat a bunch of guys, that you can't even, half those guys couldn't make the NBA, not even as role players, if you can't send a bunch of all-stars and beat those guys, we've got another thing coming.
And speaking of the United States basketball team, the men's team, as I mentioned, July 25th, their first matchup will be against France. Wednesday, they'll be taking on Iran, and then their final game of these group stage games in the Olympics will be at 8 a.m. Eastern Time, Saturday, July 31st, against the Czech Republic. And let's turn it to the women's roster, Logan, who also look pretty stacked. You've got Sue Bird, Brianna Stewart on the team as well. So this is a team also, similar. I'm expecting gold for the U.S. women's team as well. And, like I said, when you've got athletes like Sue Bird, Brittany Griner's on the team. Skylar Diggins-Smith. This is the cream of the crop of the WNBA. And in their schedule, too, Logan, it's not super hard either. They're playing Nigeria in their first game. Then they're going up against Japan on Friday, July 30th, and then they conclude their group stage games against France at 12:40 a.m. Eastern Time. Once again, Logan, I'm expecting 3 victories here. I think the hardest teams will either be Nigeria or France, because Nigeria is an improving basketball nation, as we saw a couple weeks ago when they beat the men's team in Las Vegas. But similar story to me for the women. But I want to ask you this. On the women's roster, which player to you has the most pressure to perform well in these Olympic Games? Is it Breanna Stewart? Is it Sue Bird? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's got to be probably either Sue Bird or Tina Charles. I'll start with Sue Bird. For starters, she's performed at an elite level for a lot of years in WNBA, but she needs to truly prove that she can also work internationally. And I think that would be a huge step in the right direction for her career, even though it is potentially coming to an end, as we all know.
Right.
I think it would be a huge honor for her and the entire U.S. team to win gold. So I think that her playing well is going to be a huge piece of that. And then Tina Charles, obviously coming off of a fantastic first half of her season, leading the WNBA in scoring at 25 points a game.
Right.
I think that she could be the biggest factor in the in the Team USA women's victory.
And
I think it's going to be an absolutely amazing team that's got a really good chance to take home gold, just like the men's does.
And this is going to be a great challenge for a lot of these younger players on Team USA for the women's squad. As I mentioned, don't forget, Tuesday, July 27th is when the women's team kicks off their basketball journey in these Olympics. They'll be they'll be playing against Nigeria. Friday, July 30th will be their second game against the host nation, Japan. And then Monday, August 2nd, they'll be going up against France in their group stage matchups in these Olympics. Other notable events in the Olympics that will be taking place today are women's beach volleyball. The U.S. will be taking on China at 8 p.m. Women's gymnastics qualification at 9 p.m. Softball opening round. The U.S. will be taking on Australia at 9 p.m. And then the swimming finals, the men's 400-meter individual medley, the 400-meter freestyle, and then women's swimming as well, 400-meter individual medley, and then a women's 4x100-meter freestyle relay. That'll be at 9:30 p.m. Tomorrow will be day 3 on Sunday, so kick off your Sunday with some Olympic coverage. Men's soccer group play, with Brazil taking on the Ivory Coast. Men's and women's fencing medal rounds at 6:50 a.m. Men's basketball, the preliminary rounds begin. Kevin Durant and the crew will be going up against France at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. Softball opening round will be the U.S. taking on Japan at 9 p.m. And then swimming finals tomorrow as well at 9:30 with the women's 100-meter butterfly, men's 100-meter breaststroke, the women's 400-meter freestyle, and the men's 4x100-meter relay. Once again, that's all at 9:30 p.m. for you. And Logan, one more final topic of discussion before we conclude our show, and we're going to talk about the Cleveland Indians, who, Logan, right now are second in the American League Central Division. And when we take a look at these standings and them trying to get back in that race to go up against Chicago, it looks tough right now. They're 9 games behind first place. So it looks like to me, Logan, I don't see anyone beating Chicago for that AL Central League pennant, especially with the way the Indians have been playing as of late. They're only 5-5 in their last 10 games, and they had some tough games against the Houston Astros. We'll start with what happened this past Monday. Indians fell to the Astros in Houston. It was a 3-game series in Houston. 2 losses for the Indians. They did beat the Astros this past Wednesday, But in the other two losses, 4-3 loss and then a 9-3 loss before they defeated Houston 5-4 this past Wednesday. And now they're back home taking on Tampa Bay, Logan, and it hasn't gone as planned. The Rays defeated the Indians 5-4 this past Thursday, July 22nd, and then yesterday a 10-5 whopping at Progressive Field. The Indians have 2 more games against the Rays in this 4-game series at Progressive Field. One today at 7:10 p.m. and then tomorrow at 1:10 p.m. an afternoon game. The Indians will then host the Cardinals at Progressive Field for 2 games before heading to Chicago for matchups with the White Sox. So I'll ask you this, Logan. With what's been happening with the Indians, they're 5-5 in their last 10 games. Is there a specific player you've been disappointed with and who's really kind of the catalyst as to why the Indians have been losing these games?
Well, honestly, no. It's not as much one player to me. It's more a matter of a group of players, right? And
okay.
For me, it's the closers and the relief pitchers. The closers, I mean, in that 5-4 loss to the Rays, Tampa Bay scored the last 3 runs of the game. They scored 2 in the 9th to tie it, send it to 10, and then get a run in the 10th.
Yeah.
So that's just a matter of not being able to finish. Late game. So, and then, you look at the 5-10 game, again, 6 runs allowed in the 9th inning. I don't think it would have affected the final outing of the game.
Right.
Because it already was, 4-4 at that point.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it just completely changed the momentum. And you can't do that as a closer. That's your job. You go in, you pitch 3 or 4 outs, and then you're done.
Right.
They just can't seem to get those 3 or 4 outs at the end of the game. So to me, it's not one single player. It's more a matter of a group of players that just aren't getting it done.
And also, Logan, obviously the Indians are playing some high-powered teams. You're talking about the Tampa Bay Rays. You're talking about the Houston Astros. They're going to be playing the St. Louis Cardinals for 2 games. Then they're going to be playing the Chicago White Sox for 3 straight games in Chicago, nonetheless. And speaking of the White Sox, do you think that the Indians have a chance to take that first-place spot in the AL Central division? Just because I don't think there's any way that's possible. I mean, they're 9 games behind Chicago. The White Sox are 58-39. They're 6-4 in their last 10. But they've been playing some great baseball this season. The Indians are only 1 game above 500. They're 48-47, and they're 24-26 on the road. This AL Central division kind of reminds me, in an NFL comparison, like the NFC East. Remember how terrible that division was last season? I mean, I don't even remember who. I think the Washington football team won it, if I'm not mistaken. But it was a terrible division in terms of all the teams had losing records. And when you look at this AL Central, only 2 of the 5 teams have winning records, and the Indians are one of them and are barely keeping their heads above water. So do you think, I'll ask you this, Logan, that the Indians can somehow, some way, in typical Cleveland grit and fashion, pull out of this slump and get into that first seed in the AL Central division?
Well, I do think that they will pull out of the slump. I do believe that will happen at some point when I'm not 100% sure, but I do not believe they will ever regain control of the AL Central this season. I think the 9 games that they are behind the Chicago White Sox is just too much. And, not to mention, the White Sox themselves are, kind of rolling a little bit.
6-4 in the last
10. But they're also beating good teams. I mean, in the Astros series, in a 3-game Astros series, they went 2-1. The Indians went, what was it, 0-3, I believe?
In the Astros series, they went 1-2.
Okay, 1-2.
Yep.
But that one game makes a huge difference against a team like the Astros, who are going to be competing for the World Series this year, depending on how good they can go into the postseason.
Right.
But I don't know. I cannot imagine the Indians regaining control of the AL Central just because of the roles the White Sox are on and just bad timing on this slump from the Indians.
And let's look at their upcoming schedule, Logan. For the Indians, they have 2 more games against Tampa Bay at Progressive Field. One today at 7:10 p.m. and then tomorrow for the afternoon matinee at 1:10 p.m. The Indians will then stay at Progressive Field. They'll have 2 matchups against the St. Louis Cardinals, and then they will head out on the road for 3 critical matchups against the Chicago White Sox, and then they will be on the road to take on the Toronto Blue Jays for 4 straight games before returning home on Friday, August 6th for 3 matchups against the Detroit Tigers, 1 matchup against the Cincinnati Reds, and then 3 more home matchups against the Oakland Athletics. So looking at these more recent games, Logan, these upcoming games against the Rays, the Cardinals, and especially those 3 games in Chicago against the White Sox, what do the Indians need to do to have success and get out of this slump that you were talking about?
Well, scoring runs has not been a problem as of recent for these Cleveland Indians, the Cleveland Guardians. I'm so sorry about that. But the closers. The closers have got to get it done. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, late runs in games are absolutely killing their chances of winning games. They will not win games if they're giving up more than 2 runs in the bottom 2 innings. They just will not do it because they're not going to be able to close out games when it matters most. So even if they were to get close to regaining the AL Central, they won't beat the teams that matter because those teams that are games that matter against those really good teams, the Astros, the Rays, the White Sox,
right.
Those teams, they have the closers and they have the bats to finish. They have the Jose Altuves. They have the Tim Andersons. They've got those guys. The Indians, without a closer, a consistent guy who can get it done when it matters, they're never going to regain control of the AL Central. Yeah,
and we'll see what the Indians can do, especially when you're playing these high-caliber teams. Closing the deal in these tight games really matters, and that really determines if you're a championship-built team, especially when the pressure is on. Well, Logan, that concludes today's episode of the Cleveland Sports Show. Thank you so much for taking some time to talk with me about wrapping up this NBA season, talking about the draft, the WNBA, the Olympics, which I'm so happy are back. It's been a year. Wild 2020, and now the Olympics are back here in 2021. And thanks a lot, too, for breaking down the Indians with me. Really appreciate all of your analysis. Once again, thank you so much for a terrific episode.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
It's always a pleasure, Logan. And ladies and gentlemen, you just heard me get off the phone with Mr. Purcell, but don't worry, I'm going to explain to you where more of this came from. Even though this concludes our most recent episode of the Cleveland Sports Show, you can get more of that. That's right. Let's get you started on NordoniaHills.News' website. So if you're on NordoniaHills.News, just go to the Contributors tab. That's right, the Contributors tab at the top of the page. My name is the first one down. It is Darius Sethna, spelled DARAYUSSETHNA. Once you find that, click on my name. Once you are on that page, after you click on my name, you'll be able to see all of the work I've done with NordoniaHills.News. You can scroll down to find previous episodes of the Cleveland Sports Show. I also posted some articles, some bonus sports bio articles that I had from last summer in my sports bio project. So make sure you take a look at those new articles I have that are from 2020. As I mentioned, previous episodes of the podcast on there as well. If you keep scrolling down, you'll be able to see some of the basketball broadcasts I did, the play-by-play broadcast of the Nordonia High School boys basketball team. The varsity squad had some terrific games this past season, so you're not going to want to miss out on those. And you get to hear me doing play-by-play, so it's double the fun. And I am very happy to say that the Cleveland Sports Show and all of my work is on Twitter. That's right, just type in my Twitter handle if you're on there. It's at Nordonia Sports. Or you can type in my name, if that's easier for you, Darius Sethna, spelled DARAYUSSETHNA. Once you're on my Twitter page, all of my episodes of the podcast are posted on there as well. All of my Nordonia media work, the links to the articles, links to those podcast episodes are all there for you to listen to. And we are on YouTube. That's right, the Cleveland Sports Show has its own YouTube, well, not its own YouTube channel, but it's on the NordoniaHills.News YouTube page. So if you're on YouTube, well then guess what? You've got the Cleveland Sports Show. Just go to the NordoniaHills.News YouTube page, and all of my episodes for the podcast will be on there for you as well. And I'm very proud to announce that the Cleveland Sports Show has been on Spotify for these last few years. So if you're on Spotify, well then guess what? You have the Cleveland Sports Show. Take the Cleveland Sports Show with you anywhere you go on Spotify. When you're on Spotify, just type in my name, Darayus Sethna, spelled DARAYUSSETHNA, and all of the episodes for the podcast will be there for you. You'll have a recommendation that has my picture on it, which says the Cleveland Sports Show, so just tap on that, and then you'll find all of my episodes to the podcast on there as well. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me this week. We're for the return of the Cleveland Sports Show. Only one more episode left until we hang the cap this summer on the podcast. I will keep you updated of what my future plans are in terms of the podcast and NordoniaHills.News. But for right now, have a terrific rest of your weekend, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to the podcast. Really appreciate your support. Have a terrific week. Go Indians, and we'll see you for another edition of the Cleveland Sports Show very soon.